Hello again. Welcome to another session of the 15th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Hales. I'm your moderator. Our session right now is Flipped Advising, leveraging technology to support student success. We have with us Leslie Mojico, who's an instructional designer at the University of Florida Center for Instructional Technology and Training. We also have Rodney Gammons, who's the assistant director at the University of Florida Center for Instructional Technology and Training, and he manages the instructional design team. And we have with us Jessica McCarty, who is an academic advisor with Florida Center for Center for Computer Information and Science and Engineering students, and has been advising students for more than 14 years. Wow. Well, let me turn it over to you guys and tell us all about flipped advising.
Thank you, Bob. So you have already covered our first couple of slides for us. So thank you for that. Like he said, I'm Leslie Mojico, an instructional designer, and I've been with our Center for Instructional Technology and Training for over 6 years now. But prior to that, I was an advisor and instructor for a few years and actually worked with both Rodney and Jessica, not just at UF, but at other institutions as well. So I'd like them to have a chance to say welcome and something about themselves. Rodney, you want to go first?
Yeah, welcome everyone. I just wanted to say again, my name is Rodney. I've worked with Leslie in a lot of capacities. We were both former advisors ourselves at Santa Fe College, which is also in Gainesville. So that's what really gave us the passion and the desire to come up with this product that we're going to present to you today. But other than that, I'm a Florida native, born and raised in South Florida. Moved a little bit north and came right back. But that's all I guess I can say about me right now.
Thanks.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Jessica McCarty. I'm currently an academic advisor at the University of Florida, and I advise computer science undergraduate students. And I'm really interested in how we can use technology to enhance the advising experience for both students and advisors. And I'm probably the only one here that didn't watch the Super Bowl last night.
Yeah, I watched half. Awesome. Well, we did want to start off by defining what flipped advising is so that we can make sure we're all on the same page. And flipped advising is something that's borrowed from the teaching and learning world, this concept of flipped learning or flipped classroom. In flipped learning, instructors are taking their readings and lectures, resources, any kind of pre-assessment that will help students be prepared before they arrive to class. That's all housed in the learning management system or LMS so that students can look at it beforehand. They can look at it as often as they like, and then they arrive to class to really focus on active learning and engaging in discussions, group works, and applying what they had learned in the LMS. The thing that I really love about the flipped model too is that because students are reviewing all this information ahead of time, they can see where they're getting stuck and think of questions to ask once they actually arrive to the class. And the same thing goes for flipped advising. So advisors are taking on the role as the instructor here in this scenario. They are creating these non-credit advising courses in the LMS to house readings and resources that students need, as well as any kind of video where they're able to illustrate certain concepts, show students how to navigate things like the degree audit, or, preparing for a study abroad session, whatever it is that's relevant to their students, you can house that in an accessible environment like the LMS so that they're looking at everything before they arrive to the advising appointment, more prepared, and they know what kinds of questions to ask the advisor. Whereas without this kind of content, it may not be clear all the time. What kind of questions should I be asking at this point in my academic career? What kind of questions can I ask of an advisor? Like, these are things that we don't always, that students may not always know when they're entering college. And these flipped advising courses can really help make those connections for students. It also gives advisors some more tools, which Jess will describe in a little bit, ways to communicate with students and that kind of thing. Flipped advising is a great example of combining advising and teaching, which is something that is promoted and supported by the National Academic Advising Association, where advising is valued as a teaching practice because we know that learning takes place outside of the classroom, and advisors are such an important part of that learning process. They're there to help develop those critical thinking and decision-making skills and look for opportunities to encourage students to explore and discover who they are and discover all the options available to them at the university and become more self-aware. And by creating these flipped advising courses, we're able to emphasize all of this in our practice. So since Jess is an active user of flipped advising and she's in the advising role, I'd like her to talk a minute about the benefits she's seen.
Yeah, absolutely. So in using the flipped advising model, we have found that there are many benefits for both advisors and students. The model allows us, as Leslie mentioned, to organize important academic information, resources, activities in a meaningful, productive way so students can learn their degree requirements, involvement opportunities, department policies and procedures. And this helps students take ownership of their education. And it helps advisors be more effective and efficient in the advising meetings with students. Because students have access to the resources in a more purposeful and structured way, they come more prepared to the advising appointments. They know the questions to ask. And the questions that they ask are more informed too. So during the advising appointments, we can provide better feedback to the students and suggestions based on what they're coming to us with, because they've spent some time doing the legwork prior to advising. So with this exchange, the advisor-student interaction becomes more collaborative, and students can explore and reflect on the advisor suggestions, and that helps them make more empowered decisions about their academic career and what direction they want to go in. This space that we've created here with the flipped advising model is moving away from the prescriptive advising, and it's more developmental advising. So it allows advisors to cultivate an environment where students assume responsibility and autonomy, but at the same time, we're still nurturing their personal and professional development. Another benefit to the flipped advising model is that it can promote peer interaction. Within the model, advisors can create a place where students can share ideas, they can share their projects, recommendations. It's also a space where student organizations can promote their events and recruit new members. So it's really promoting a more holistic approach to advising. So it's not just about academics, right? It's also about their social and professional development. And lastly, flipped advising allows students to become familiar with the different people in the department and how things are run. Through welcome and informational videos, they can meet their advisor before even coming into the office or other important people in the department. So it makes it less intimidating, especially for new students, and they can see a familiar face and they know how things are run and what to expect. So this also promotes a sense of inclusion.
That is one of my favorite parts to all of it, is that we're showing students we care and we are approachable support staff and advisors that are there for them, and that makes everything else possible. Okay, so some history and context for what we've done at the University of Florida is that in 2016, I was thinking about using the LMS for advising, and Rodney and I decided to go and approach a particular unit to see, would you be interested in piloting this service? We went to them and just told them, you know, we're interested in creating a non-credit advising course. We think that you all would be wonderful to pilot this with. Are you interested? And they jumped at the opportunity. They were so excited to develop a flipped advising course. And since then, we've developed more than 50 flipped advising courses in our office. And a lot of that's just spread through word of mouth. We do very little marketing on the service, but advisors show other advisors the course they developed. And it becomes very clear that when you work with instructional designers who are always in this teaching and pedagogy world where we know how to design something to be usable and accessible and engaging, that those things really benefit the advising population as well. So we've had advisors who will use Canvas on their own, and they have told us they feel limited in the time and the energy that they can devote to that course design process. So combining the advising with instructional designers, I think, has really elevated that service here at UF. It's a core part of our instructional design service now in our office. I would say every semester we get just as many requests from advisors as we do faculty. And that's really exciting for us because we wanted to be able to create this flexible service where we can impact student success in lots of different ways and not just through designing a standard course, but what are other ways that we can impact student success at the university. So I'd like to show you a video from that group that piloted it originally to get their perspective. Oh.
One of the things we do in our office is called flipped advising. So we push a lot of information out to the students, and without the site, I don't even know how we would do it. Having the ability for the student to kind of reflect before they come into our office has really helped us as advisors to have more meaningful conversations with students.
Approaching new people can always seem like a daunting task. However, when the advisors take that first step, they take away some of that stress. I know that when I came in to meet my advisor, I felt a lot less stressed and was able to have a much more fluid conversation with them about my new 5-semester plan.
The Canvas site allowed me to develop mentorship skills by creating a new platform to reach out to students, as well as defining the role of a peer advisor and how we help students.
All of the advisors in the college are terrific and know all the ins and outs that the students need, but I think with a peer advisor that's been through some of those challenges in very recent years might be a better connection in addition to what they will get out of the advisors that we already have.
The collaboration with the designers kind of allowed us to bridge that gap and bring in some of those teaching practices to the Canvas course. In our office, we have advisor ratios of 300 to 1. So we don't have a lot of time to actually get to know students. That's how this site has really helped us.
It was important to provide a student voice to this project to make the advice more authentic to students, so that it's coming from a student who was in their same place a couple years ago and has been in the same classes, applied to the same internships, all the same things that they're doing now, just that it comes from someone who's familiar with it.
Let me get back to the PowerPoint. Hang on. There it goes. So one thing that was highlighted in there is that we had a lot of student perspective embedded into our advising course. So you saw a lot from peer advisors who were able to share their perspective and be involved in more of a mentorship role, which gave them a lot of leadership skills as well. A question we often get asked when we do this presentation is, how did we convince our department to let us make this a core part of our service? And for us, it was starting small by piloting it with one group, but then also looking for ways to connect it to our strategic goals of information technology. So every 5 years, our information technology department, which is where Rodney and I live, publishes some strategic goals. And it was really easy to make connections between that and convince our department to allow us to add this as a service. It was tracked really closely with that pilot group to see how it impacted their advising practice. And after implementing flipped advising and moving more toward an introspective advising model, the advisors tracked and reported a drop by more than 50% on their critical tracking probation numbers. And they attributed that to having more introspective advising where it's connected to reflections and planning and all of these things that they ask students to complete in the course so that their advising appointments are a lot more meaningful. So I'm going to pass it over to Rodney, and he's going to tell you more about our office and what we've historically done and how that easily translated to flipped advising.
Oh, thank you, Leslie. And that video she showed, it still makes me smile and gives me a sense of pride.
know.
Especially at a Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
These people are one of my fondest memories of working on this large project. But all right, so I'll get over the sentimental stuff. So we, Leslie and I are part of the CITT, which is part of the centralized IT department, which is called Academic Technology. So we have IT, that's our overarching department. Then we have AT, and then we fall under AT as CITT. So we have a team of instructional designers, which I manage. That's the team that I lead. And then we have a learning analytics specialist team. We have educational technologists, and we have a studio staff. All of us are part of the SIT, and we communicate really often, and we all work together on different projects. So anytime we get a request for a project, if someone, say for instance, comes to us for instructional design help, if we know that they need help with recording videos or do anything that's media worthy, we'll send them over to the studio staff, and we'll be a liaison for them in communicating with our studio staff and things like that. But in particular, the instructional design team, we provide full and partial course developments, and then we also do consultations for anything ranging from technology to accessibility issues that people may need. And those meetings typically are an hour, 2 hours, or it can be 2 to 3 of those meetings that happen throughout a month or a week or whatever it may be, which is separate from our course development process, which I'll get more into. And then we have our video production team. Sometimes when people come to us, they may not want full development. They want something partial. That partial may not have anything to do with instructional design, but they may want us to help them with some video stuff. And they want us to help them with scripts, making sure the videos are accessible, their PowerPoints are accessible, or whatever it may be. So our course development process, we're very flexible, but I'm going to talk about our traditional course development process, our full course development process. Where we use the ADDIE model anytime we approach a course when we're working with faculty. And we use that same mentality, and we transitioned it when we started working with the advisors, because we see the advisors we look at advisors just like how we look at faculty members. We look at them as subject matter experts. They're the experts. They know the content that they want. They just need some help and guidance, and they need our expertise. We're putting things online. But so we established in the first 1 to 4 weeks, okay? The biggest thing we have to do is establish a relationship, and we need to conduct a needs analysis. That's the biggest thing that we need to do. We need to figure out what it is that the subject matter expert needs. What exactly do they need help with? What are the gaps that they may be missing? And we need to talk through those things. And then during these first couple of weeks, we also do a course development agreement, or just a development agreement, where that consists of a timeline and a schedule and everything that we agree on. I know that we talked about this being a 15 to 16 week process. That's our traditional thing, but sometimes like with the bigger projects that we've had, they can go a full year of development. So we talk about those things at the beginning to get the schedules all ironed out. So after we get through that process, that's when we really start drilling down on the course goals, and we start writing objectives early in the beginning for the development that we're working with. Next slide. So once we get into the meat of our schedule, the 5 to 10 week period, we begin to develop the learning objectives. We design and we develop, part of the ADDIE model, design and develop. So we design and develop a lot of things that need to go into the course. We look heavily at course content that can range from assessments, any kind of assignments, forms that you want students to look at, review, or any videos that you're thinking about. All those things will be talked about during this process when we usually work with faculty. It's very content heavy. If the subject matter expert doesn't give us any content, we really can't help them because without the content, we don't have anything to go off of. So we really need that content in, and that's when the work really starts to begin. And from there, with the content that we're given, we start to organize it and we start to create modules, and we start putting things in Canvas and organizing it and mapping out the entire course so they can really get a good look of what the course is going to look like. And we start plugging content into those different modules that match with the objectives that we're trying to achieve. And the last part of the phase, we're still probably going to be working on some content throughout, even towards the end, but we should be working with the studio at this point, or at least initiating it and getting a lot of the media content starting developed and filled in. And then after that's all done, we want to train people on how to use the course that we've created. In a traditional class, when we work with faculty, maybe not so much, but with our advisors, we have to train them because they're going to be using some technologies and methods and some streamlining of the content that they need to know about before they jump into the course to help students, because students are going to go in there blind, and we need to make sure that the advisors are able to navigate them through it if they get lost, which they shouldn't, but if they do get lost, advisors need to know how to work the course themselves. So we really train them, and if they see anything, any gaps that are missing, or we see anything, we update the course during that time. And we provide a lot of resources for evaluation and feedback from working with us, and also for the faculty when they're working with their students, just to get some feedback from them to see if there's anything that we can improve upon and make better moving forward. So all of this really pointed advisors to us, because the process where we work with faculty was really, it really spoke to them, because they saw themselves as faculty members, they saw themselves as teachers teaching students how to navigate through their degrees. So it was easy to translate and transition advisors into working with us, and it was an easy process. And the learning management system that we use is Canvas. It's a system that I think is one of the better systems out there. It's not perfect, but it is the best. I mean, Leslie can chime in and say it is the best that we've ever worked with, because we've worked with a couple that were nightmarish. But instructional designers, advisors, video production team, we all work together. We collaborate a lot, and we have in-house IT support. So if anyone needs any help, we can actually, if we can't help them, we can send them to our IT support team, which is ELS, and then we have the help desk that helps students and things like that as well. So each institution may be structured differently. We're directly connected to the IT department at large, so we get a lot of that support. But we do know in other institutions, maybe if you're like in the College of Engineering, they have their own IT person that can help them, or they may have their own IT department that they can reach out to. But since we're a part of a centralized unit, a lot of our stuff is pretty easy to access, and people come to us regardless. But we don't necessarily do the technical work. We just connect on the people that need help to those that can do that technical work for them.
Okay, now we're all going to show you around some of the courses that we have developed. And in here, I wanted to highlight some of the commonalities and the different types that have emerged. We said earlier that we've developed more than 50 at this point, and with all of those, we've noticed 3 main types. So I'll explain that in a second. But like Rodney said, we try really hard to honor each development as its own thing, where we conduct a needs analysis and see what kind of needs do the advisors have? What kind of support do they have? It's going to be very different designing a course for a group that has a large number of advisors compared to one that might have 1 or 2 advisors that are managing everything. So we take that into consideration, and also the needs of the students. There are different policies and procedures with each college or each department, and different milestones that they may need to meet But there are still commonalities. Like we always develop our courses around what we call modules, which are groupings of content around the objective. So we want to make sure we're really intentional about how we deliver information to students, and it's very obvious and clear how the connections are being made. The advising courses are not rigorous in any way. So it's such a treat as an instructional designer to develop a flipped advising course, because I don't have to ever think about rigor. I'm giving a gift to students where I want to try to make a course as easy as possible. You can find what you're looking for. And that's the focus is the course usable and is it accessible? So those are things that we emphasize in every single course. The other thing that's really important in every course we design is that the advisor is present, not just throughout the development, but in the materials, as well as the facilitation of the course, that the advisor is the main star. The common types that have emerged would be a guided and sequential structure, which we find more often in our advising groups that are looking for a solution for a short period of time. Like maybe they only have students for 1 year and they want to make sure that they deliver information throughout that year so that doesn't overwhelm those students and it's delivered in an intentional way. Resource Hub, which is what Jessica has really, she was, I think, the first advisor to start this model, and it's become our most popular in our office. Resource Hub is such a useful structure if you are trying to create a course site where students should just be able to go in and easily find what it is they're looking for. It's not necessarily a guided experience where they have to do it one step at a time, but they enter in, they have access to exactly what they need, and you still are able to embed some requirements and communication throughout that type. And this last piece, targeted experience, could have elements of the resource hub or the sequential one, but I wanted to call this one out specifically because we didn't get a lot of them at the beginning, but we get a lot of them now because we often think flipped advising, how can we create a course for an advising group? But what if there's a smaller population within your advising group that needs even more support and feedback from you, and you're not able to provide that level of support and feedback to your entire advising population, but maybe you want to create a smaller course that has more focused goals for your undecided students or your academic probation students. So these targeted experiences are a reminder to our advising groups that we can create course sites for other things. And that's why we have so many, I think, because of the targeted experience. This is a quick snapshot of the 3 different types, the landing pages, and you can see they're all different because all the advisors also have specific wants and needs for the layout. This first one is that sequential model where you can see there's a phase and each module is numbered and they move through it. And I'll show more of that in a second. The second one is an example that Jess has worked on, that is that resource hub where it's organized by category so students can easily find what they're looking for. And this last one is targeted experience. This is a course called Success in the Swamp, which was developed for our students who were on academic probation. And the advisor has items in there that they can prompt the students to reflect on and complete before the advising appointment. So for the first one, the guided sequential, I'm showing you an example from our first year engineering group where they meet with their students. They have a required advising appointment each semester for 3 semesters. This is first year advising, so they only have them for 1 year, and they really wanted something that was sequential and didn't overwhelm these first year students. That's the key, I think, with this one is first year. we want to not overwhelm. So you can see here in phase 1, students were just meeting their advisor, understanding what resources were available to them, how do they navigate their degree audit, and then they are thinking of the courses they want to take their first semester. So at the end of phase 1, they schedule their advising appointment, and the advisors pull up the assessment that the students submitted here, look at the courses that they wanted, and they talk about that in the advising appointment. Then the next semester is phase 2, and the next semester after that is phase 3. Everything here is intentionally chosen for the timing of that program. And when a student clicks on one of these items, they're brought to a module page. And this is what we work on through the design process. Like Rodney mentioned, we have objectives that we create, and we want to make sure that any of the content and assessments in that module align to those objectives. And we spell it all out for students so they know exactly what we're hoping they accomplish in each module. We also have access to our video services, and Rodney is such a all-star when it comes to video production. I'd like him to take over this slide, and I'm going to share this link in the chat here in just a second.
Well, yeah, so I don't know if I'm a star. I just probably do a couple things unconventional than most people would think about. But yeah, so our studio is really impressive. I'm not going to even kind of water it down. It's a pretty impressive space. The former president, the one that just left, used our studio at whenever he needed it because he was so impressed with it to make any type of videos or anything that he wanted to get out to campus, and he needed a nice studio. He would come to our studio, and there were many options on campus, but he came to ours. But enough about hyping them up, but it is an awesome space. But so some of the videos that we did a lot of student interviews, whether that be in studio or we would go and do a location shoot, or we would do some things, we would do a person on the street, or we would ask the students questions. I don't know if you remember seeing in the video that Leslie shared, where you see like students and they're actually on campus talking to the camera. So we had those perspectives as well. And then, excuse me, we would do showcase videos where we would give like tours and things like that, walking people through a certain location so they can find the office, they can find the person that they need to talk to. Because, UF's a big campus and people tend to get lost quite often. And if it's hot outside, you'll eventually give up and just like, I'm going home. So we also did videos where we highlighted different aspects of the course that we're going to project. So we had our Meet Your Advisor where they could have a chance to introduce themselves. Students can get to know them a little bit, know who they're talking to. And advice from students, that video portion was very important to us in this particular project and all of our projects when we work on with students, because we want other students to hear what their contemporaries have to say. I don't know anybody else, when I attended college, I would have been more confident in my journey had I heard other students talk about their struggles, how they overcame it, or even their successes. And I think that was an important aspect of the course that we developed with first year engineering and others in the future. So we also walk through students through degree audits, or we'll take it's like a screen capture. We're recording the screen of the advisor walking through the process of a degree audit, spelling out the things that students need to know, going detail by detail. So things like that are very valuable. And our studio team was very helpful in this, editing it, zooming in, zooming out, panning, whatever we needed. So we really appreciated them, and we advise anyone to get with the team if they have one. We'll talk about other options in the future as well.
Yeah, and I put in the chat a link to this virtual tour they've developed in case you're curious at the setup and want to compare that to different types of offices at your institution. We are very lucky to have them here. They've helped a lot. The other thing that is present in all of these flipped advising courses are different readings and worksheets. Many advisors develop an advising syllabus that's going to highlight their philosophy when it comes to advising, different kinds of expectations from the advisor and from the student perspective, and important dates, deadlines, roles, and responsibilities. All of that could be in an advising syllabus or in other materials found in the course. Jess, did you want to speak to the worksheet or any of the other readings that you commonly see?
Sure, we like to put a lot of our college and department policies in the content because these can vary a lot between colleges and even between departments. So it's nice to have a place where we can put this information and point students to it so that they have the right information for us and how we do things in our department, you know, whether it's dropping a course or, you know, how do I graduate with honors, things like that.
And another thing that is common is some sort of planning worksheet. I see these in almost every advising course where we start them off by saying, here's what you should be thinking, you know, for 3 semesters or 4 semesters, or maybe just 1 semester. So depending on that program, there may be some limitations there, but some kind of planning worksheet that students can tangibly hold on to and have and bring with them to the advising appointment. And that goes with our assessments. So like I said, those worksheets are really common, the academic planning. And the other really valuable part to flipped advising is embedding reflections in here to get students to think about things that they might not realize they need to be thinking about at that point in their academics. So prompting them with those kinds of reflections or surveys is not only important for them, but it's also important for the advisor to get a sense of what's going on in that student's world. And what we find too is that not every student feels comfortable sharing vocally in the advising appointment, and that maybe they would feel a little more comfortable being able to write it out or compose their thoughts ahead of time instead of being on the spot and trying to share what's going on with them. So just having an option for students to engage with you in other formats is so important, I think, to their success. All of these kinds of assessments really vary, again, depending on the support that the advising group is able to have. We don't want to put a lot of assessments in a course if the advisors aren't going to realistically be able to provide feedback on all of them, because then it doesn't accomplish what we want. We want to design it in a way that's really realistic for that group. But we've seen all sorts of great ideas there. Now, Jess is the queen of Resource Hub, so I'm going to pass it on to her to talk a little bit more about this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll take the crown. Thank you. Yeah, because we're working with upper level students, we decided the Resource Hub would be best for our student population. So this is, you know, where students can access information on their own, as directed by us, by advising, or, you know, as needed on their own as well, for reference, for future referencing. And as you can see, we have different modules here. Some are for everybody, and then we have some specific to the 3 majors that we offer in our department. And we're constantly referring students to the resources in here, especially via email, because it's really easy. We can send a link. Here it is, you know, you can reference this later. And even during appointments, when I'm talking to students, whether it's on Zoom or in person, I'm bringing up the Resource Hub and saying, okay, you want to know about this policy? Well, you know, I'm going to tell you about it, but here's where you can look at it later on, because, you know, you might not be able to remember everything I said. So in the College of Engineering, students have a registration hold each semester. So they have to meet with an advisor before they can register for classes. So the advising holds module houses the advising worksheet, which is one of the activities that we use in our Canvas course. So we require them to complete this before they come in for advising. And we'll go into the advising sheet more later, but essentially this requires students to answer questions about their degree requirements and also their upcoming schedule, and reflect on kind of where they're at right now in their academic career and like where they want to go. Lastly, the Resource Hub is basically the main way we communicate with all of our students. So we have a blog in here, we have announcements, the announcements go to their email. So any kind of important academic information we need to send to them, this is what we use. We don't even use a listserv anymore. We use this Canvas course. And what's great about this too is like Rodney said, once we have been trained, once the advisors are trained on this, we can update this on our own if we need to tweak something. And so we're not having to wait for someone else to do it or ask somebody else to do it. We can actually, make these updates on our own. So that's kind of nice too.
Oh, that's such an important point, because I find that some advisors, they have a website where they've tried to organize some of this content public facing, but it's not so easy for them to get access to edit it. Also, the LMS provides that comfortable environment that students are already in for their courses and the communication tools and things like that. Yeah. So here are some examples just to give you an idea, where advisors are just thinking of how they're grouping that content so students can easily find it. And like Jess said, it's so helpful to have something to point students toward, whether that's during an advising appointment or if they email you a question, you're easily able to reference where they can read more about that in the advising course. So lots of commonalities here. You can see all the designs are different. Some of them do have a required element where students have to complete something and all the other stuff is resources available to them. So there is like a hybrid, I think, approach here where there might be some required orientation pieces and then everything else is open to them. Jess's office uses a pre-advising worksheet for every advising appointment to ask those reflection questions. Jess, did you want to speak more about this?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the College of Engineering requires students to meet with an advisor prior to getting their registration hold removed. So we kind of force their hand there. They have to come meet with us. And in our department, we created the pre-advising worksheet with Leslie and Rodney, and basically they have to complete that also before they come into advising. And some of the information that we gather includes their academic status. Are they on probation? What year are they in? And obviously this information can be very helpful in what you want to focus in on the advising appointment, what you want to bring up possibly based on these answers. And then again, with the accountability, we're having the student look up their registration date and time so they know when they're going to be able to select and register for classes. And this is a big deal in our department specifically because our enrollment is bursting at the seams. So, having them be accountable for when they register on time is important, because if they don't register on time, maybe they're not going to be able to get the classes that they need. And then asking when a student is planning to graduate, again, helps with what we may recommend to the student. For instance, we have a special fall, spring program for graduating seniors. So we want them to be aware of that. We want them to take advantage of that. So, we can, in the appointment, let them know about it if they're graduating. We can also, we also include the reflection questions. And we want to make sure the student is in the right major. So having them confirm their interests and skills are a good fit for the major is really important. And we also use this opportunity to see what activities the students are engaging in. Have they completed an internship, undergraduate research? Are they part of a club or organization? What are they doing to continue their professional development? So based on their answers, this is a great talking point as well. And lastly, I call this my mental health question in disguise. What are the bright spots and challenges thus far? So students, as Leslie mentioned earlier, typically are more comfortable sharing information, sensitive information, more honestly and openly in writing than if we were to maybe ask this in a Zoom appointment or an in-person appointment. So for the challenges, some of the answers that we get, include time management, issues, motivation, stress, depression, anxiety. So those are things that, you know, are good for us to know, and then we can, you know, discuss it with the student, refer the student to the appropriate resources. And, you know, for the bright spots, it's just an opportunity for us to encourage and congratulate them on their accomplishments. So that's how we use it.
And just the like every advisor I think I work with talks about giving ownership to students, like you mentioned. Like these are, yes, we are providing so much content in an easy to navigate environment that some might think, you know, is this hand holding? No, we are making something fully accessible to our students for them to be successful, and they are able to take ownership of their academic journey and really just take advantage of all the things that we're highlighting. So I'm glad you mentioned that. The last one here, targeted experience. Again, just want to include it to get you thinking about other opportunities to implement flipped advising. If it's not for an entire advising population, that is absolutely fine, but there are so many opportunities out there to provide additional support to some of our smaller groups. So these are usually developed for shorter periods of time, more targeted groups that have a focused goal, or maybe solving some kind of challenge or problem. We've seen it with our undecided student population. We have a course called Exploratory Roadmaps that helps guide students through some self-discovery exercises and exploring all the different opportunities related to majors and careers at the university. So just knowing what their options are. That is through our exploratory advising. And then the example of our academic probation course that an advisor has created to help support those students, as well as our orientation at the university. And during the pandemic, we had to go all online for our orientation. And these are targeted experiences, though it wasn't a shorter or smaller group. This was 9,000 students and families. So I think I did say it can be for smaller groups, but it can also be for very large groups. But again, it's a short period of time that we're walking them through the orientation. Rodney, you want to share lessons learned?
Yes, so as it says in the top bulletin, or the top bullet, collaboration is key. So we talked a lot about working with the studio and things like that, but that relationship between the subject matter expert, the advisor, and the instructional designer, that collaboration is key because a lot is birthed out of that. On our side, you know, we have the analytics, we have the studio and things like that, but the advisors typically have the information, they have the students that we can ask questions to get perspectives from and things like that. So collaborating and being open and talking is very important for this entire process to work out. And there are low-tech options. You don't have to use a studio. I know I talked a lot about the studio and how great it is. It just made things more appealing. It gave us some flexibility in what we can do. But overall, I mean, you can use a PowerPoint, you can record your videos through Zoom, you can use YouTube and post the links there. Or if you have a learning management system, a lot of them have the option to record videos directly into the learning management system. So you don't have to have a camera, a team, and all of that to get things going. Because what's more important than anything is the content that you present and have online and readily available for the students to use over and over again, so they can limit the amount of times they ask you something that's a rote memory thing that they should know before they come in and see their advisor. We did see an increase in efficiency for advisors and students because of the learning management system that we use and having everything online, whether there be resources or be something more extensive like the first year engineering project that we worked on, because students come in already knowing information about their degree and what they want to do, or they may start researching other degrees and come and talk to the advisor about that as well. So they have their questions ready, they're ready to engage, and there already is that buy-in, other than my mom said I need to be an engineer to come in to the office and get ready to talk. So anticipate demand is a big one because the demand was key. Some people were caught off guard by the amount of students, the amount of traffic they would get, the numbers increase, and you have to have the support to manage the amount of demand that you're going to receive when you build something like this, because it can be overwhelming in a good way, but you still just want to be prepared so you're not staying long hours trying to help students after hours or anything like that. So we did revise a couple of our developments. The one that we worked on before, we noticed that, correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie, but it was just too many assessments or quizzes that students weren't really necessarily utilizing the way they wanted to. And you can't really mandatory make them do it, but they wanted to scale back on some of those things. They did want to capture the data still, but they wanted to scale back on how many questions they asked students, because it was becoming to be daunting for some of them in that regard.
Yeah, with every course development we do, we try to include some kind of reflection log or things that we should be paying attention to as we run the course. So we recommend revisions every 3 times a course has run anyway. You learn a lot, your student population is changing, technology is changing. So you design it and it's not just good to go forever. You definitely want to keep revising it based on new things we've learned and new needs we've discovered.
This is the
And
same I'm sorry.
oh, I was just going to say also the demand on our office is something that's good to think about, is how can your instructional designers also anticipate the demand that this new service would bring. And Rodney, showed how our design process is the exact same. So the training that instructional designers needed was very small, but it is good for us it's good to anticipate how many clients you might get as time goes on.
And I would say, Leslie, it's not even so much a training, it's just making instructional designers aware of the lingo and what advisors need overall, because it's essentially the same. I mean, our entire, like the revisions and everything, we do all the recommendations that we're recommending are for our regular courses that we have within our catalog. So anytime we have a course that goes over 3 years, we're always telling them you should revise, because things change and students have different needs, as we all know, throughout time and how things have gone. So we have some resources available for everyone. We have some advising self resources. If you scan the QR code, see the dinosaur.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the link for you. I thought I had it. But this is our QR code that brings you to all of these resources. So we have an advisor self-service course where you can see some examples. We've got some articles that have been published and presentations and some other things that we want to highlight. So I'll go grab the link and put that in the chat. But
there's some information about us as well, I believe, in that link too.
Yeah, so I know we've hit our time. If anyone has any questions, please ask away as I grab that link.
Right. Most people are jealous with the resources you have to put all this together. I've been fortunate. A few places I've been, I've had similar resources, but probably more often it's been, not all that. How have other colleges done anything similar to what you've done?
Yeah, Rodney and I get approached pretty often to talk about how we've implemented flipped advising so they can think about implementing it at their institution. And we worked with CUNY in New York to help develop flipped advising at their institution as well. So I think, and if you go on NACADA's website, you'll see a lot of articles and workshops around flipped advising. So it's becoming popular for sure. And that should bring you to a Google folder that has a copy of our slides and then the resources that we just mentioned. But if you have any questions, feel free to also reach out afterward. But thank you for having us here.
Well, great. The whole concept is excellent because it's, in the long run, it saves all of you time that you can devote to other things, things that are repetitive. Well, the flip concept is excellent for that. Why, take your time to do the same thing over and over?
Yeah.
Great concept.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, we're gonna have to
Bob.
go. It's almost
Okay.
time for the next session. But
Alrighty.
hey, this is good. I appreciate it. And it looks
Yeah.
like you've given some ideas to our
Yeah.
folks.
Thank you so much.
So
Bye.
thank you guys. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
Yeah, you too. Bye.